Hello and welcome to the last full segment in this mid of the course module on extended reality and robotics. And today we're going to look at ethics. So the goal is to identify some of the challenges in some of the topics we've mentioned up till now and consider also potential solutions. There's lots of positive uses of these kind of systems that we've talked about in the previous segments. But often there are also downsides. So, for example, VR headsets usually assume that people have good eyesight, and also these tools can assume mobility, which can be problematic with some conditions like cerebral palsy, autism, and anxiety, it seems. There's also incompatibilities with other tools, like the gaze tracker that I have doesn't allow glasses, and unfortunately I have glasses. These tools, these XR hardware might require really good sound. It might require you to have a strong voice and clear pronunciation. And you might have trouble using two controllers depending on your situation. Likewise for robots, robots are very complicated. So if they break, it's quite tricky to deal with it unless you're an expert. And equipment is also hard to get your hands on. It can be expensive both to buy or to build. So you can see some prices. If you buy toy robots, of course, it's not as expensive as if you buy a robot that can do a lot more, that can maybe pick up stuff, for example, and move around some space. XR stuff tends to be cheaper than robots, but it still has its own price, which is a little bit interesting when we think about people from poorer countries. There are negative effects that could occur from using such systems. For example, extended reality, cyber sickness is very well known due to tracking or frame rates or lag. And also possibly information overload. If some people have low thresholds, so if you have lots of different elements in the VR world you've designed, that can be visually overwhelming for some people. XRR could be used to locate and harm people. For example, in the game Pokemon Go, when it first came out, some people set up lures to lure victims over to where they were so they could mug them and grab their cell phones, their smartphones. Robots could do bad stuff if they're hacked or broken. They could fall on you, shock you. Your hands could get caught in their joints. There's even been speculation that robots could be used by robbers. You know, you can send a robot into somebody's home to check if they're there before going in yourself. If the robot's caught, well, no problem. It's not you. Cartels might even use these legal autonomous weapons or slaughter bots to attack people. And of course, mental health is really a big concern. Some people might feel anxiety or trauma or post-traumatic stress syndrome, stress, jealousy, disappointment from using such systems. And these experiences can be stronger than maybe experiences with other media, more traditional media, because it's XR is so immersive in robotics. You know, it can actually physically affect you. It's very engaging. So this can include anxiety from harassment, griefing, doxing, cyberbullying, canceling, ninjaing, etc. It can also include anxiety from having to deal with technology. Some people don't like this. There may be uncanny valley effects when you have NPCs or robots that look very human-like, but not quite human-like. So it's like this principle of Hollywood monsters like vampires, or which are close to humans, but slightly different and eerie or offsetting to some people. There was this example that my colleague mentioned, which is when they tried to have a teleconference with a person with dementia. They said they were very anxious, and they said, "Why is my family member trapped in this box?" You might feel stress from dealing with these pressures. Maybe you need a better headset, a better robot, or you need to get this equipment in some VR world, or to get a property in some nice place. You might feel trauma from experiences that wouldn't otherwise be possible. So you seeing some type of horrible thing take place, or meeting a bully or some parent who didn't treat you properly. Disappointment over leaving your body. If it's great when you can have the virtual body, then it's maybe sad when you don't have it. And there can be things that are less directly connected to mental harm, but still not desirable. Like maybe the Proteus effect that we mentioned in the second segment could also have negative effects, even though for example, in this study where they investigated the use of VR to reduce racism, using the system actually led to some negative effects as well. The people who used it became more defensive, and they avoided their Black coworkers more. They felt guilt or shame or anger. There's also the possibility when you're designing VR or robots to unintentionally spread disinformation or betray somebody's trust, because to set up an entire world, you need to do a lot of work, and there's often not enough time to do a proper job on everything. So some of the details have to be skimmed, but then people maybe don't know that this is a simplification. There might be cases in which people using such systems go down a bad path themselves. So they might start to feel addicted or dependent on such technologies. There's easier access to bad stuff that might corrupt people. Part of that, with regard to violence, maybe people might become desensitized using XR. You can do anything in the XR world, and maybe you start to become more confident and do worse things in the real world. Distraction from real problems. There's this fun anecdote about a father who paid gamers to kill his son's character in a game because he wasn't paying attention enough to his job and his real life. XRR systems, we expect, can be very persuasive, especially robots that are sort of very engaging and in your face. And that can be misused maybe to get you to buy products from certain companies, or to in this kind of echo chamber like situation, to foster extremism or to groom victims. There's definitely going to be threats to privacy and tracking and scams. Consensual harm as well might not be okay. So like was mentioned, for example, you might think of XR is allowing you to have an outlet for stuff that you would never do in the real world. Because you have this outlet, you won't do it then in the real world. But we don't know if that's actually going to be the case for everybody. Maybe it will be the reverse. Maybe, again, you'll be desensitized and start doing worse things in the real world. So the Nether was looked at pedophiles. Is it better if a pedophile gets rid of their urges in the virtual world, or does it make them more of a threat in the real world? Another source of potential problems is the difficulty in finding who is liable when some type of problem arises, because these systems are incredibly complicated. Extended reality and robots often have distributed agency. If a system causes problems, whose fault is it? There's a person who's doing different things. There's the system itself, maybe a robot or something. There's often a manufacturer of the hardware. There's a team of maybe developers and designers who decided certain things, or is it maybe somebody else, people who are interacting with you in this virtual world? Um, and extended reality is often quite close to games. So some games allow you to use headsets and all this type of thing. But gaming elements, gamification can also have its own downsides. So it can be fun, and it can be humorous and lead to trust and a good feeling, but it can also, if done wrong, lead to disinterest, especially over time, demotivation when you do something and the system doesn't reward you for it. So often with these open-ended games, you might have different ways that you want to play the game, but it might not always give you positive feedback for that. Frustration, confusion, distraction, and worry, like for education, like will this game part of things actually affect my grades? So what can we do? Well, I have a few suggestions for how to avoid some pitfalls. The first one is just that designers, developers, researchers working in this area should be aware about the tenets of responsible and sustainable design. Like in medical ethics, we want to try to design for autonomy, justice, beneficence, and non-maleficence. So what does that last one mean? Probably you know already, but just to say it, we can maybe intend something positive for people, but we should also try to avoid negative outcomes for them. So this can be two different things. If you just want positive things, you might be willing to take some type of risks at their expense. Design for all. We should design with accessibility in the mind from start. This is different disabilities, the cost of the systems that are needed. Abuse deterrence. We should try to detect abuse in extended reality and robotics and ban the abusers or place them into separate worlds or sandboxes, try to limit interactions with people who could be abusers, have also enhanced accountability to deal with this kind of distributed agency problem. Avoid excessive power imbalance. So extended reality and robotics shouldn't just be safe for early adopters or the rich. We want to look in general at security of the systems that we design. So if we're using a robot, for example, it shouldn't be very heavy so that if it falls on you, it really hurts you. The joint should be soft and compliant so that if it bangs into, it won't keep on going and force you up against a wall or something. We should use encryption whenever possible, try to hide physical connections and limit the attack surface. If you use common software like Unity, Unreal Engine, ROS, whatever, this is really great for development, but it could also expose security risks because then hackers can attack a great range of different systems that are based on those tools. We can consider common attacks like adversarial machine learning. From the AI perspective, we can incorporate redundancy and limited access, security audits, and ensure that developers know where to go to if they find some type of problem that could be also informative for others. Safe distances could be good to have. So if you're looking at things like emergencies, disasters, and historical events that are scary, then You might not want children to be able to play certain roles, like the victims or the abusers. And clear information and legislation, I think, are very useful. If there's extra context needed for some type of XRR experience or what the potential dangers could be. And I've gathered a bunch of different references for you if you're interested in finding out more. There was also some references in the slides previously, I think. If you're interested in this, please feel free to leave me a comment or something, and see you next segment.